everyone, and welcome to another tutorial from Scribbles and Notes. Today I will be explaining to you how to make a watermark in Photoshop, and I will give you two very simple ways to do that. Now, as you can see, I've already opened a photo in Photoshop. So the first thing I always do when I am preparing a file for use on the internet, I will change the size of the photo to whatever I want it to be in my website. Now, I put it on 72 dpi and I put the size or the width of the picture to 620 pixels, which is the size that I want to use on my website. And I do OK. Now, if you can see, it gets very small. If you use Control 1 or Apple 1, then it gets to 100% with one click. Now this is the size I will be using on my website. Now the first way to add a watermark to your photo is very simple. You select the text button on the left, and I do text, and I wait a while. Then you check which color your text is on, whether you are on the right a letter type you want, etc., etc., if the size is about right. Now, you can always change that later, of course, but you basically click in the photo and you type the text you want to have as your watermark. You then drag it to just about the right position. You can change the size or make it a different color, whatever you want. Now the important part is that if you look here, you can see that Photoshop automatically, as soon as I enter text on an existing picture, it creates an extra layer here, which gives you a few options. Now the first option you have is to change the cover of your text on the photo to a much lower cover. As you can see, I put it on 29%, and you can still read the text, but it's less obvious. I hate having it on 100% because, well, if I look at this photo, the first thing I do is I look at the text instead of those lovely cherries that this girl is holding. You can change this into any color you want. That's the advantage of using Photoshop. I mean, you can, if you want to have it whatever, yellow or blue, well, I mean, you can change it however you want. Obviously you can use the copyright thingy here, which I can never remember what the sign is, so but you can definitely do that. And well, that's in essence, that's the way to add a watermark. If I turn the layer on or off, you can do two things with the layer. So you can make it one before you go any further. So you can, it says here flatten layers. If you, I think I need to make sure that my cat stops meowing. Just back again. Where was I? So you can export it now for web. So you see here you can save for web and devices. If you do that, you can have some other, you can make sure that the quality is not too high. If you put it too high, your photo will become too big for your website and it will load slower. So make sure it's not too high, but you still want to have enough sharpness. And that's the good thing about using this to save it for web, because it has some kind of algorithm in it which makes it look the best it can when you put it on your website. I'm not going to save this because it's not really interesting. So that's one way you do it. If you save it for web and devices, it will automatically make it into one layer. If you don't want to do that and you want to save this as a regular file, you can make it one, oh sorry, let's use this one. You can make it one layer here. So this is layer, and then you go to flatten layers. It's whatever you want. So that's the first way to make a watermark. Now the second way to do it. So let's say you have a company logo or a blog logo, and that's what you want to use as your watermark. Now, making a brush in Photoshop is really a lot simpler than people think it is. So let's say you have this brush and you see what happens if I do that, right? As soon as I click on it, it makes a little brush thingy. You can do the same thing with your logo, but in order to do that, you first have to create a brush from your logo. So what I did is I already imported into Photoshop my blog logo. And now the fun part is, as soon because any brush that Photoshop uses is in grayscale essentially. So as soon as I turn this little picture into a brush, it will only look at anything which has any color in it and transfer it into a grayscale brush. Now it's so simple you're not gonna believe it. If you go to edit and then you go to define brush set, I think it says in English, and you click on it, and it asks you, okay, how do you want to call this brush? So you, in my case, I will call it cooking brush, and I do okay. And now, see what happens? It automatically removes all the white stuff and it shows the outlines of the brush. Now I have to resize this picture again because I put it back to the original. So 620, okay. One. See, if I hover over the image, you can see that it has my logo on it. If I click on it, see what happens? Ta-da! So this is a brilliant way to put your logo on top. Now, of course, you can't really see because it's a little bit dark here, but so you'd have to do it somewhere where you can actually see it. It will always be in grayscale, so you can't really change the colors, or not as far as I know. But let's say I want to change the coverage again. Now, if you can look here on the layer palette, you see that I can't because it doesn't show any layers. That's because I forgot to make a separate layer. So anytime you work in Photoshop, I would always recommend work on a separate layer. So I'll go back to image size, and it's very quick to create a new layer. It's exactly the same as your background by using Ctrl J or Apple J. So now you see I have background and layer here. If you don't remember the command, you can always go to new layer, new, and then create layer. I think if you do this, it's an empty layer. Layer, new, from background. Okay, yeah. Oh, it makes the that was the wrong one. Anyway, there's a couple of ways to make a new layer. I think there's one here. See, I never use that, as you can tell. Anyway, so now if I use this and I think it's too obvious, I can decrease. See? I can make it less obvious. So this is actually really perfect. You can change the size like any other brush. Make it very small or make it very big. And you can have as many little frogs on your picture as you want. If you don't want it, you can always click it on or off. You can remove the layer by dragging it here to the little trash bin. As obviously this is not the way you want your picture, but if you, let's say you have a photo you want to show and you don't want anybody to steal, then I'm guessing this is the way to handle your picture. But as you can see, it's two very simple ways to create a watermark in Photoshop. And I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, you can always leave a comment or send me an email, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye bye.